yeah, I just think you have to tell people, you know, tell them that you think they're interesting. You know, be sincere. Um, don't tell people you don't think are interesting that they're interesting.
Hmm.
But, you know, I think everyone is. And maybe that's I'm naive, but I
Hmm.
do really think they are if you can like let them reveal what is interesting about them. Um, and I would say like um, my boss Laura, she read this, she told me this like that she like read this self-help book she remembers, but she doesn't remember what it was called or why she was reading this self-help book. But something in this book was that everyone has like their zone of like competency, which are things that like you're good at. Then you have like your zone of expertise, which are things that you're like, you know, especially good at. And then you have your zone of genius, which is like something that like there's one thing in the world. It might not be a marketable skill, but there's one thing in the world that every single person is a total genius at.
Hmm.
And they're just perfect. They get it. Whatever it might be. It could be cooking a certain dish, it could be a certain kind of conversation, it could be creating sock puppets. Like it could be who knows what it is. But I think I like to like look for what that thing is in people. And I think therefore my zone of genius is doing that. Is like
That's nice.
is like looking for the thing, because I think it's I don't know, I just and like it's like the thing when that really just lights them up and they're just like you can't shut them up about it, and it's and you know it's really compelling or whatever. And
Yeah.
so I think if you just like say like, hey, I noticed you're really into that thing, why don't you, I do this work in a lot of different places, and so
Right.
it's I can see when institution is taking precedent over the work, you know, and it like is so obvious to me when that happens. It really gets me down because I like it's like a snowball. Like you have to like keep the momentum going, or other people will kind of, I think people will kind of forget like, oh, I don't have to show up for that theater workshop anymore. I was sort of scared to do it anyway, so I'm just gonna, it's like if you don't kind of keep presenting opportunities for people to stay engaged, then I think people like lose that like spark, and I think the institution can get in the way sometimes.
Hmm.
um, but on the audience participation front, I think we've had moments where like some of the lyrics were on the back of the program, and then we had a moment of like, okay, everyone like stand up, follow the lyrics on the back, and like we're going to sing the last verse together or something like
Oh,
that.
cool.
We've had one year we had, there was like a guy in the neighborhood who is he is like a drum circle facilitator.
Oh, yeah.
And he has just like, you know, his big opens up his minivan and he just has like 20 djembes in the back of his truck.
Oh,
And so he was like, we're like, there's like this sort of summoning moment that happened in the play, and so he taught like half the cast how to play the djembe, and then they all like came out into the sort of, you know, aisles of the audience and played. So it was like
oh,
a really, you know,
wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
And but otherwise, yeah, otherwise I mean it really just feels like I know when an audience is alive and like when they're dead, you know. And these are hands down the most alive audiences I've like ever seen, because they like every turn they could see someone on stage that they know.
Mhm.
Right? and and so you're looking out for things in the show that I think in a more traditional way you wouldn't be looking out for. And so it requires you to like be on the edge of your seat and be like, what am I going to see? And so, and I think that that's the thing. I know that's the thing that got me into theater in the first place, was that I was a young person who didn't really know where like my group of friends were. I didn't really know where I belonged. But then when I did a play and my friend saw me on stage, and then we got to have a conversation about that, then
Mm.
I was like, oh, like this is, you know, something about me now, and we can talk about it. And so then when I went to theater school and we were all just always in plays watching each other, you know, it was like so exciting to see your friend do something that was different than what you would expect of your friend, right?
Right.
You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you played that character. Like, that was so good. That was so different than you. And that exchange, I think people who haven't done theater before, like, don't know about that sort of like special moment.
Right.
And so then what this kind of work does is it gives everyone in the audience that opportunity to like see their grandma or see their child or see their neighbor up on stage being a kind of different version of themselves.
Mm.
And then their like definition of that person expands, right? Because they're like, "Ah, I never would have thought they could do that."